The stage lights poured down like warm gold, bathing the theatre in a soft, reverent glow. The crowd sat in hushed anticipation, a rare silence falling over the room, not from boredom, but from something unspoken, something sacred. And then, from the shadows of the curtain, he stepped forward, Elvis Presley, in his iconic white jumpsuit, rhinestones catching the light like stars. The king was home, and the crowd knew it. But what they didn't expect was what came next. A small hand appeared from behind him, delicate, hesitant, and then she stepped out. Lisa Marie, dressed in a simple white dress, her eyes wide with a mix of wonder and nerves, she looked up at her father, and in that moment, time seemed to stop. The audience didn't move. No one breathed. Elvis knelt slightly, offering her the microphone like it was a treasure. His voice, steady and warm, whispered, "You ready, baby?" She nodded, just once. And then, as the first tender notes of Love Me Tender drifted from the band, father and daughter began to sing. Their voices weren't perfect in harmony, but they were perfect in something far more powerful, emotion. Elvis's deep, velvety tone wrapped around Lisa Marie's soft, fragile melody like a promise, a father's love, sung in real time. A legacy passed not in words, but in music. People in the audience wiped tears from their eyes. Some clutched their chests, some smiled through their sobs. Because this wasn't just a duet, it was history, it was love, and it was the moment the world saw, not Elvis the legend, but Elvis the father, sharing his stage, his spotlight, and his heart with his little girl. When the final note rang out and the lights dimmed, the applause came like thunder. But Lisa wasn't looking at the crowd, she was looking at her father. And in that gaze was every lyric, every lullaby, and every late-night whisper she'd ever heard from him. This wasn't a concert moment, it was a memory, and for everyone lucky enough to witness it, it was unforgettable. At first, Elvis didn't even realize he had stopped playing. His fingers, frozen mid-chord, rested gently on the piano key. The crowd faded from his awareness. The lights, the stage, the grandeur, it all disappeared. For a brief, sacred second, it was just him and her, Lisa Marie. Not just his daughter now, not just a little girl in a white dress standing under the spotlight, but an artist, one who had just revealed a piece of her soul through a single line of song. He turned, eyes soft, voice even softer. "Lisa Marie," he said, like her name alone was the melody he'd been waiting to hear. "Come here, baby." She hesitated, one tiny step forward, then another. The moment hung heavy in the air, the kind of moment where the entire audience holds its breath and doesn't even realize it. But with the quiet bravery only a child can carry when standing beside someone they trust completely, she walked across the stage toward him. Elvis extended a hand, guiding her to the center, to his world. "Let's try something," he said, nodding toward the mic. "You remember Love Me Tender?" She nodded, barely a whisper, but it was enough. And so, he began to play. At first, her voice wavered, delicate and uncertain, like a candle flickering in the wind. But Elvis adjusted immediately. He softened his chords, slowed the tempo, and gave her the space to find her rhythm. And she did. What began as a whisper soon grew wings. Her notes, fragile yet full of heart, floated out into the hushed auditorium. They weren't rehearsed. They weren't perfect, but they were real. And Elvis, he didn't just accompany her. He supported her, like a lighthouse guiding a ship through its first voyage. His legendary voice curled gently beneath hers, never overpowering, always uplifting. And in that moment, something rare happened. They weren't just performing, they were connecting, soul to soul, note to note. The audience, once spectators, were now witnesses. Tears welled in their eyes, not just from the beauty of the music, but from what it represented. Legacy, love, continuation. Elvis had performed with icons. He had shared the stage with legends. But this was different. This was his daughter. This was his heart. What no one knew, not even them, was that a technician had left the studio mic open during soundcheck hours earlier. The recording equipment in the wings quietly rolled as the most personal duet of Elvis's life, played out in front of thousands. No polish, no plan, just presence. When the song ended, there was a stillness, a hush so thick, you could hear the sound of a heart breaking, in the best way. Then, thunderous applause. People stood. They clapped through tears. Some simply held their breath, stunned by what they had witnessed. But Lisa didn't see the crowd. She only saw him, her daddy, and the look in his eyes said everything. He had seen her, really seen her, not as a child, not as a fan, but as an artist, and maybe as his greatest legacy. That night, Elvis didn't just enjoy a sweet moment with his daughter. He stepped into a role he rarely got to play, that of teacher, mentor, guardian of something sacred. He began to share things he'd never spoken about on stage: how to breathe from the diaphragm, how to use silence as power, how to let emotion colour each phrase. He spoke not in technique alone, but in feeling. Singing, he told her, isn't just sound, it's truth. You don't sing to impress, you sing to connect. You sing to tell the truth of who you are. And Lisa Marie, so young, yet so ready, listened with the kind of focus only a child has when learning from someone they adore. In that room, something far greater than music was exchanged. It was legacy, a flame passed from one soul to another, not through fame or fortune, but through the quiet, reverent act of giving. And Lisa Marie took it to heart. News of the recording began to quietly ripple through Elvis's inner circle. Whispers turned into questions, questions turned into curiosity, and before long, Colonel Tom Parker, always alert to opportunity, pulled Elvis aside. "You know," Parker said, "this duet, it could be something big, a surprise release, a bonus track. Think of the headlines." Elvis didn't even let him finish. He looked him square in the eye and said calmly but firmly, "This isn't for sale," because it wasn't a product, it wasn't a pitch. It was a moment, a memory, a private, sacred thread between a father and daughter. And Elvis wasn't about to let the world twist it into something transactional. He made a few copies, just for close friends, for family, for those who would understand. And when he played it back for guests at Graceland, it wasn't with the pride of a performer showing off a hit. It was with the tenderness of a father sharing a secret joy. People who knew him well would later say they had never seen Elvis happier than when he talked about that night. Not after a sold-out tour, not after a chart-topping album, but after singing with his little girl. And Lisa, that night lit something inside her. She began to sing more at school, at church, in private moments with her father. She wrote little melodies, hummed harmonies as they walked through the halls of Graceland. The flame was growing, but always, always quietly. That recording wasn't meant for the world. Not yet, because some treasures you protect before you share. And for Elvis, that wasn't just music. That was family. 6 months later, the world went silent. Elvis Presley was gone, and the world mourned a legend. But Lisa Marie, she mourned her dad. The halls of Graceland felt emptier. The piano bench sat untouched. But in the quiet that followed, one thing remained. A single tape, tucked safely away. A memory pressed in sound. Their voices, forever locked in harmony. And suddenly, that recording became something more. It wasn't just a duet anymore. It was a conversation, a message, a living piece of him, whispering back to her across time. She played it often, not for performance, not for attention, but for comfort. And each time, she heard something new, a soft laugh, a slight catch in his voice, a reminder that their bond had never been about spotlight, but about soul. Years later, she would say, "That night changed everything. Before that, music was just something my father did. After that, I realized it was who he was, and it was something he gave me." The tape was eventually preserved in the Graceland archives, not for profit, not for promotion, but for legacy. Because sometimes history doesn't happen in stadiums or studios. Sometimes it happens in quiet rooms when no one's watching. Just a father, a daughter, and a song that never really ends. Years passed. Lisa Marie grew into her own voice, literally and figuratively. She would go on to release albums, perform on stages, and carry the Presley name into a new era. But she always traced the origin of that journey back to one quiet night at Graceland, where it all began with a single song beside her father. The world remembers Elvis as the king of rock and roll, a trailblazer, an icon, a voice that changed music forever. But Lisa Marie remembered him as the man who turned to her and said, "Come sit with Daddy, let's sing." That moment, that unplanned, unpolished, unrepeatable moment, wasn't about perfection. It wasn't even about the music. Not really. It was about connection, about passing something invisible from one generation to the next. It was about love. That recording, now carefully preserved, honored, and rarely heard, has become one of the most meaningful artifacts in the Presley legacy, not because of how it sounds, but because of what it holds. A father making space for his daughter's voice, a daughter discovering not just music, but herself, and a bond so strong it made even silence feel sacred. We often think of history as something loud, big, televised, but some of the most powerful moments don't happen in the spotlight. They happen in whispers, in laughter, in the way one voice can rise and another can gently support it. Elvis's greatest legacy wasn't just gold records or sold-out arenas. It was his ability to hear the soul of a child, his child, and make room for it. And Lisa Marie's greatest inheritance wasn't fame or fortune. It was the feeling of being seen, encouraged, loved through music. So the next time you're with someone you love, child, parent, friend, remember this. Sometimes the most important songs are the ones no one hears but you. And sometimes the most unforgettable moments happen when the world isn't watching. They happen when two hearts find the same rhythm and decide to sing together forever. If this story touched your heart the way it touched ours, we invite you to take a moment, not just to remember Elvis and Lisa Marie, but to reflect on your own meaningful moments, the quiet ones, the ones that didn't make headline, but shaped your life all the same. Because legacy isn't built in front of crowds. It's built in kitchens, in car rides, in bedtime songs, and late-night conversations. It's built in love. If you believe stories like this deserve to be preserved and shared, please subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue honoring the hidden moments behind the legends, the human side of history. And if you haven't already, tap the like button to let us know this story moved you. Do you have a memory like this? A time when music or a loved one left a permanent imprint on your heart? Share it in the comments. We read every single one. And if this story made you think of someone special, a parent, a child, a friend, don't just think of them. Send them this video. Let them know their voice matters. Because sometimes the right song at the right moment can echo forever.